In the glass-walled lobby of Hale Dynamics headquarters in San Francisco, Ethan Cole stood beside his 12-year-old daughter Lily, watching the morning light fracture through steel beams and plate glass. He was a security engineer, a single father, and someone who had learned to listen for what wasn't being said. Lily spoke 7 languages fluently, a gift that had emerged naturally from years of library audiobooks, language exchange apps, and an insatiable curiosity about how people really communicated beneath the surface of words. Today, CEO Victoria Hale would finalize an $80 million deal with a multinational consortium spanning Japan, Germany, France, and the Middle East. When the professional interpreters stumbled over overlapping dialects and hidden meanings, Lily tugged her father's sleeve and whispered, "That man is setting a trap with slang, and the translation document has reversed meanings." 5 minutes later, the boardroom erupted in tension. The deal hung by a thread. The company's reputation balanced on a knife's edge. And only 2 people in the building understood what had just happened. The morning had begun quietly in their Oakland apartment, where Ethan taught Lily what he called listening between the lines. They sat at the kitchen table with breakfast cooling on their plates, and he explained how security wasn't just about firewalls and access codes. It was about noticing when something felt wrong, when a pattern broke, when the background noise changed pitch. Lily nodded, tracing her finger along the rim of her orange juice glass. She understood. Language worked the same way. A word could mean one thing in Tokyo and something entirely different in Osaka. A phrase that sounded friendly in formal Arabic might carry a warning in its dialect variations. Ethan had raised her to trust her instincts, to speak up when something didn't add up, even if adults in the room seemed confident. He never imagined that lesson would matter quite so much, quite so soon. They arrived at Hale Dynamics just after 8 in the morning. Ethan had been called in for a temporary security briefing related to the high-stakes negotiation. Victoria Hale wanted every detail locked down, every access point monitored, every visitor logged and verified. Lily came along because her school had canceled classes for a teacher development day, and Ethan couldn't find childcare on such short notice. She brought a backpack full of books, a notebook, and earbuds. She promised to stay quiet, to sit in the corner, to be invisible. But Lily had never been particularly good at being invisible, especially when words were flying around her in languages she understood. The lobby hummed with a low, constant sound. Air conditioning whispered through vents. Heels clicked on polished marble. Somewhere, a coffee machine hissed. Ethan called it the wind through the glass, a metaphor for the ambient noise of corporate life. Lily liked the phrase. It reminded her that even silence had texture, that you could learn to hear the shape of a space just by paying attention. She followed her father through security checkpoints, past rows of sleek desks and glass-walled conference rooms, until they reached the executive floor where Victoria's team was preparing for the final negotiation session. Victoria Hale was a woman in her early 50s, sharp-eyed and steady-voiced, with a reputation for turning struggling companies into industry leaders. She greeted Ethan with a firm handshake and glanced at Lily with polite curiosity. Ethan explained the situation, and Victoria waved it off. The girl could sit in the observation room, watch the proceedings through the glass if she wanted. It might even be educational. Lily thanked her quietly and settled into a chair with a clear view of the main conference table. She pulled out her notebook and clicked her pen, ready to take notes the way she always did when she encountered new languages in the wild. The conference room filled quickly. Executives from Hale Dynamics took their seats on one side of the long table. Across from them sat representatives from the consortium. Yumi Takahashi from Tokyo, a poised woman in her 40s, who spoke English with precise formality. Klaus Brenner from Munich, a broad-shouldered man with wire-rimmed glasses and a dry sense of humor. Isabelle Moreau from Paris, elegant and quick to smile. And Karim Al-Farsi from Dubai, whose deep voice carried the weight of generations of negotiation experience. Behind them sat interpreters, each with headsets and laptops, ready to smooth over any linguistic rough edges. CFO Marcus Reeves paced near the window, checking his phone every few seconds. He was younger than Victoria by a decade, ambitious and impatient, and he had made it clear to everyone that closing this deal quickly was essential. The stock price had already jumped on rumors of the partnership. Delaying would send the wrong signal to the market. Marcus wanted signatures today. Contracts finalized, press releases drafted. He wanted to win. Lily watched the interpreters set up their equipment. She noticed they were working from pre-translated slide decks, documents that had been prepared in advance to save time. One slide caught her eye. It was a German phrase translated into English, something about partnership commitments and risk sharing. But the English version seemed too favorable, too generous. The German idiom carried a shade of meaning that didn't quite match. She jotted it down in her notebook, underlined it twice, and glanced at her father. Ethan was standing near the back of the room, arms crossed, scanning exits and monitoring the security camera feeds on a tablet. She caught his eye and tapped her notebook. He raised an eyebrow. She mouthed the words later and returned her attention to the table. The meeting began with pleasantries and summarized talking points. Victoria opened with a statement about shared vision and long-term growth. Yumi responded in Japanese, her interpreter translating smoothly into English. But Lily heard something the interpreter missed. Yumi had used keigo, the formal, honorific Japanese, reserved for high-level negotiations. But she had also slipped in a single phrase in Kansai dialect, a regional variation from Osaka, that carried a subtle edge of skepticism. It was the linguistic equivalent of a raised eyebrow, a polite way of saying we're watching you closely. The interpreter rendered it as straightforward agreement. Lily frowned and made another note. Then Karim spoke, weaving a metaphor in classical Arabic about a borrowed saddle and a long journey. It was an old saying, a warning about partnerships where one side bears more burden than the other. But the interpreter translated it as a trusted alliance built to last. Lily's pen moved faster. She cross-referenced the phrase in her mind, pulling from Arabic literature she had studied online, from dialect recordings she had listened to late at night when she couldn't sleep. The metaphor wasn't about trust. It was about imbalance. It was about someone riding a horse they didn't own. She underlined the phrase 3 times and added a note in the margin. Payment terms. Milestone language. Check original documents. Victoria paused mid-sentence, her gaze drifting toward the interpreters. She had built her career on instinct, on sensing when a room felt wrong. Something in the rhythm of the conversation had shifted. She called for a 10-minute break. Marcus objected, but Victoria held up a hand. 10 minutes. Coffee, stretch legs, come back fresh. The consortium members nodded and filed out. Marcus muttered something under his breath and followed them into the hallway. Ethan moved toward Victoria as the room emptied. Lily appeared at his side, notebook open. He hesitated, then spoke quietly. There might be a problem with the translations. Victoria turned to look at them both. What kind of problem? Lily took a breath and pointed to her notes. The Kansai phrase wasn't agreement. It was skepticism. And the Arabic metaphor is about unequal partnerships, not trust. If the payment terms are based on this translation, we might be signing something that shifts more liability onto us than we realize. Victoria studied the girl for a long moment. Then she looked at Ethan. Your daughter speaks 7 languages? She does. And you trust her judgment? I do. Victoria nodded slowly. All right, let me see what you've got. Lily spread her notebook on the table and walked Victoria through each phrase, each discrepancy, each place where the translation had softened or shifted meaning. She explained dialect variations, cultural context, the way idioms could carry double meanings depending on who was speaking and who was listening. Victoria listened without interrupting. When Lily finished, Victoria picked up her phone and dialed Sophia Martinez, the head of legal. Get up here, now. We need to review the translation footnotes in the contract appendix, all of them. Marcus reappeared in the doorway, coffee in hand. Are we resuming or not? We're taking an extended break, Victoria said. I need to verify some language details. Language details? Marcus set his coffee down hard enough to splash. Victoria, we've been over this contract a dozen times. The interpreters are professionals. We're on a deadline. I'm aware of the deadline. Then let's close this. Victoria met his eyes. Not until I'm sure we're all signing the same deal. Marcus glanced at Lily, then at Ethan, his expression hardening. You're stalling an $80 million deal because of a kid's homework notes? I'm stalling an $80 million deal because something doesn't feel right, Victoria said evenly. And in my experience, when something doesn't feel right, it usually isn't. Marcus walked out without another word. Ethan and Lily exchanged a look. She closed her notebook and slipped it back into her bag. I'm sorry if I caused trouble. You didn't cause trouble, Victoria said. You might have just saved us from making a very expensive mistake. But as Lily sat back down in the observation room and watched the adults move in tense clusters outside the conference room, she wasn't so sure. She had spent her whole life learning languages because she loved the way they opened up worlds, the way they let her see through other people's eyes. She had never imagined that knowing how to listen might put her father's job at risk, might make powerful people angry, might turn her into the reason a massive deal fell apart. Outside, the city stretched below them in grids of glass and steel. The wind pressed against the windows, and somewhere in the building, a clock was ticking down toward a deadline that suddenly felt a lot less certain than it had an hour ago. Sofia Martinez arrived within minutes, a tall woman in her 30s with sharp features and sharper instincts. She had built her career on finding the traps hidden in legal language, the clauses that seemed harmless until you read them 3 times under the right light. She sat down across from Lily and asked her to go through everything again, slower this time, with more detail. Lily obliged, pointing out each phrase, each idiom, each place where the translation had bent meaning just enough to change the stakes. Sophia took notes on her laptop, cross-referencing clauses in the contract, tracing threads through footnotes and appendices. After 20 minutes, Sophia sat back and rubbed her temples. There's a footnote in the multilingual appendix that references the German phrase, Lily flagged. It's vague. It talks about risk-sharing mechanisms but doesn't specify liability caps. If the German interpretation holds more weight in arbitration, we could be exposed in ways we didn't anticipate. Victoria leaned forward. How much exposure? Hard to say without running scenarios. But potentially tens of millions. Marcus had returned, standing near the door with arms crossed. This is speculation. We've had these documents reviewed by 3 law firms. Then why is there a vague footnote? Sophia countered. Why is the German phrasing ambiguous? Because international contracts are complicated. Because we had to move fast. Victoria stood. I don't care how fast we had to move. I care about what we're signing. Marcus shook his head. If we delay, Adrian Pike's fund is ready to swoop in with a competing offer. He's been circling this deal for weeks. You stall now, you lose leverage. The consortium will walk. Victoria turned to Ethan. Is Pike involved in this? Ethan hesitated. I don't know. But I can check. Do it. Marcus stepped forward. Victoria, this is insane. You're torpedoing our biggest deal because a 12-year-old thinks she caught something that trained professionals missed. She didn't just catch something, Victoria said quietly. She caught 3 things. And every single one of them changes how we read the terms. She turned to the room. We have 48 hours before the consortium's deadline. I want a full audit of every translation, every footnote, every clause that references non-English source material. I want to know exactly what we're agreeing to in all 7 languages. And I want to know if anyone outside this company has been influencing the translation process. Sophia nodded. I'll pull the document history. See who had access, who made edits. Marcus exhaled sharply. This is a waste of time. Then it's my time to waste, Victoria said. Meeting adjourned. The consortium members were informed of the delay. They were polite but clearly confused. Yumi asked if there was a problem with the terms. Victoria assured her it was just due diligence, nothing to worry about. Klaus frowned and muttered something in German that Lily heard from across the hall. He was asking Isabel if this was normal in American negotiations. Isabel shrugged and suggested they get lunch. Karim simply nodded and said he would wait for clarity. They were patient, but patience, Lily knew, had limits. Ethan spent the afternoon running traces on the document editing history. He pulled metadata from the contract files, checked IP addresses, cross-referenced access logs against known security protocols. What he found made his stomach tighten. Several key edits to the multilingual appendix had come from an IP address registered to a VPN service commonly used by financial firms in New York. The edits were small, subtle shifts in phrasing, adjustments to footnotes, clarifications that actually muddied meaning, and the digital fingerprint matched patterns Ethan had seen before in cases involving corporate espionage. He called Victoria from a quiet corner of the security office. Someone outside the company has been editing the contract documents. The trail leads to New York, same city where Adrian Pike's fund is headquartered. Victoria was silent for a moment. Can you prove it was Pike? Not directly. But the pattern fits. Someone wanted this deal to close fast, with terms that looked good on the surface, but carried hidden risks. If we sign and it falls apart later, Pike could buy us at a discount. Victoria's voice was cold. Find me everything you can. I want timestamps, IP logs, anything that shows tampering. I will, but Victoria, if we go public with this, we're not going public. Not yet. First, we fix the contract. Then we decide what to do about Pike. Lily sat in the observation room, watching her father work through the glass. She felt a strange mix of pride and guilt. She had done what she always did. Paid attention to the words people used and the meanings they carried. But now her father was in the middle of something bigger than a translation error. Now they were both tangled in corporate warfare, and she wasn't sure how to untangle them. Sophia came by in the late afternoon with printed copies of the contract sections Lily had flagged. She sat down next to the girl and asked if she could explain the Arabic metaphor again. Lily walked her through it, word by word, pulling out her phone to show dialect recordings she had saved, examples from poetry and old speeches. Sophia listened, nodding slowly, and when Lily finished, she looked at her with something like respect. You're better at this than most of the translators we hire. Lily shrugged. I just like languages. It's more than that. You understand context. You hear what people mean, not just what they say. That's rare. My dad taught me to listen between the lines. Sophia smiled. He taught you well, but as the afternoon wore on, the pressure mounted. News of the delay leaked to the financial press. Headlines appeared online, speculating about trouble at Hale Dynamics. Stock prices dipped. Analysts questioned whether Victoria had lost her nerve. And then, like clockwork, Adrian Pike's fund issued a statement expressing interest in supporting the consortium's vision should current negotiations falter. It was a polite way of saying he was ready to steal the deal. Marcus confronted Victoria in her office, his voice loud enough to carry into the hallway. You're destroying this company because you listened to a child. Do you understand what's happening out there? We're bleeding value, the board is furious, and Pike is circling like a vulture. Victoria's voice was quieter but no less firm. I understand perfectly. And I'd rather lose value temporarily than sign a contract that bankrupts us in 2 years. You don't even know if the translations matter. That's why we're checking. Marcus slammed a hand on her desk. You're checking because you're scared. You're stalling because you don't trust your own judgment anymore, and you're hiding behind a kid who probably learned Japanese from cartoons. Get out of my office. Marcus left, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Victoria sat alone for a long time, staring at the city below. Then she picked up her phone and called Ethan. I need your address. An hour later. Victoria Hale stood in the modest living room of Ethan Cole's apartment in Oakland. It was a small space, tidy and warm, with bookshelves lining the walls and a kitchen table cluttered with Lily's notebooks and language textbooks. Lily sat on the couch, eyes red from crying. Ethan stood nearby, arms crossed, his face tight with frustration. Victoria sat down in the armchair across from them. I heard what Marcus said. I'm sorry. Lily wiped her eyes. I didn't mean to cause problems. You didn't cause problems, you identified them. There's a difference. But now everyone's angry, and my dad could lose his job. And the deal is falling apart. The deal was already flawed, Victoria interrupted gently. You just helped us see it before we made a mistake we couldn't undo. Ethan spoke quietly. Victoria, maybe it's better if we step back. Let your team handle this without us. I don't want Lily in the middle of corporate warfare. Victoria looked at him. I understand. But I need you to know something first. She took a breath, her gaze drifting to the window. I have a son. He's 14. He has a language processing disorder. Words don't come easy for him. He struggles to express what he feels, to understand what people mean when they speak. I've spent years watching him fight to be heard, to be understood, to make sense of a world that moves too fast for the way his brain works. She looked back at Lily. When I see someone with your gift, someone who can hear the things most people miss, I don't take that lightly. I know how rare it is, and I know how important it is. Lily met her eyes. Do you really think I can help? I know you can. But only if you want to. Only if you're willing to see this through. Even if it gets harder before it gets easier. Ethan placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. It's your choice. Lily. Lily looked down at her notebook. At the pages filled with phrases and translations and careful annotations, she thought about the consortium members, about Yumi and Klaus and Isabel and Kareem, about the way they had all been speaking in good faith, trying to build something together, not realizing that the words between them had been bent just enough to break trust. She thought about her father teaching her to listen, to notice, to speak up when something didn't feel right. She looked up at Victoria. What do you need me to do? Victoria smiled. I need you to help us rebuild this contract. Word by word. Language by language. Until we're all saying the same thing. That night, Ethan's living room became a war room. Sophia arrived with her laptop and a stack of printed contracts. Victoria brought coffee and a whiteboard. Lily spread her notebooks across the table and pulled up dictionaries and dialect databases on her phone. They worked through the night, dissecting every clause, every footnote, every phrase that carried weight. Lily explained idioms and cultural context. Sophia traced legal implications. Victoria made decisions about what they could accept and what they couldn't. By dawn, they had identified 11 places where the translation had shifted meaning in ways that mattered. Some were small, technical adjustments. Others were significant, clauses that would have exposed Hale dynamics to risks the board would never have approved. Lily created a chart showing the original phrasing in each language, the intended meaning, the translated meaning, and the potential legal consequence. It was clear, methodical, undeniable. Victoria looked at the chart and felt something close to relief. This is exactly what we need. Ethan rubbed his eyes. Now what? Now we present this to the consortium and renegotiate. But we do it transparently. We show them what we found. We acknowledge the confusion, and we propose clean terms that everyone can agree to in their own language. Sophia nodded. And if they walk, then they walk. But I don't think they will. Not if we approach this the right way. Lily yawned and leaned against her father. Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders. You did good, kiddo. She smiled faintly. Thanks, Dad. Victoria stood and stretched. Get some rest. Both of you. We present tomorrow afternoon, but rest didn't come easy. The financial press had picked up the story, and the narrative had shifted from delay to disaster. Analysts speculated that the deal was dead, that Victoria had mismanaged the negotiations, that Adrian Pike would swoop in and take the prize. Hale Dynamics stock dropped another 3%. The board scheduled an emergency meeting, and someone leaked an internal email to a business news site, an email in which Marcus had written, "We're taking strategic advice from a 12-year-old. This is embarrassing." Lily saw the headline on her phone the next morning. Her stomach twisted. She showed it to her father. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Don't read the comments." "I won't." But she already had. People called her a fraud, a distraction, a kid playing dress-up in an adult world. They questioned her father's judgment, Victoria's leadership, the competence of everyone involved. It hurt more than she expected. She had only wanted to help. She had only tried to do what her father had taught her, to listen carefully and speak honestly. And now strangers were tearing her apart online. Ethan knelt beside her. "Listen to me. People are scared. They're losing money, and they don't understand what's happening. So they lash out. But you know the truth. You know what you found, and that's what matters. What if I'm wrong?" "You're not wrong. I've seen the evidence. Sophia's seen it. Victoria's seen it. You caught something real, Lily. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." She nodded, but doubt lingered in her chest like a cold stone. At noon, Ethan received a call from HR. He was being placed on administrative leave, pending an internal review of his decision to bring his daughter into a sensitive corporate environment. It was phrased politely, but the message was clear. He had broken protocol, and there would be consequences. He listened without arguing, thanked the HR representative for the notification, and hung up. Lily saw his face. "Dad, it's fine. Just paperwork." "You're lying," he sighed. "Yeah, I am." She felt her eyes sting again. "This is my fault." "No, it's not. I made a choice. I believed you, and I spoke up. That's on me, not you." Victoria called an hour later. She had heard about the HR action. "This is Marcus's doing. He's trying to isolate me, discredit you, and force the board to overrule me." Her voice was tight with anger. "I'm not letting that happen. Victoria, maybe it's better if you step aside, if Lily backs down." That's exactly what Marcus wants. He wants this deal to close fast, clean, and profitable, and he doesn't care if it falls apart 6 months from now, as long as he gets his bonus. She paused. "I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Ethan looked at Lily. She nodded. "We trust you." "Good. Then meet me at the office in 2 hours. We're doing this." The conference room filled again that afternoon, but the atmosphere was different. The consortium members sat with cautious expressions. The interpreters looked nervous. Marcus stood near the back, arms crossed, his face unreadable. Sophia set up a projector and distributed printed summaries of the analysis Lily had prepared. Victoria stood at the head of the table, calm and steady. "Thank you all for your patience," she began. "I know the delay has been frustrating, but I want to explain why it was necessary." She gestured to the screen. "Over the past 2 days, we discovered discrepancies in the multilingual versions of our contract. These discrepancies were subtle, but they had the potential to create significant misunderstandings about liability, payment terms, and risk-sharing mechanisms." Yumi leaned forward, frowning. "What kind of discrepancies?" Lily stood. Her legs felt shaky, but she kept her voice steady. "May I?" Victoria nodded. "Please." Lily stepped to the screen and pointed to the first example. In the Japanese version, there's a phrase using Kansai dialect that implies skepticism about liability caps. It was translated into English as straightforward agreement, but the original meaning suggests concern about who bears risk if the project fails. Yumi's eyes widened. She spoke quickly in Japanese to her assistant, who pulled up the original document on a tablet. After a moment, Yumi looked at Lily. "You're correct. That phrase does carry a different tone. Lily moved to the next slide. In the Arabic version, there's a metaphor about a borrowed saddle. It's an old saying that warns about unequal partnerships. The translation softened it to sound like mutual trust, but the original meaning is about one party bearing more burden than the other. Karim sat back, his expression thoughtful. He murmured something in Arabic, then nodded. The girl is right. That saying is not about trust. It is about imbalance. Lily continued through each example, explaining context, dialect, and cultural meaning. Yumi and Karim confirmed her interpretations. Klaus reviewed the German phrasing and admitted that the idiom was ambiguous, that it could be read in ways that shifted liability. Isabel checked the French clauses and found similar issues. The interpreters looked uncomfortable. One of them, a middle-aged man with a British accent, cleared his throat. I apologize. We worked from prepared translations and didn't catch the nuances. Victoria held up a hand. This isn't about blame. It's about accuracy. We need to make sure we're all agreeing to the same terms. In every language. She turned to Sophia. Show them the metadata analysis. Sophia pulled up a timeline of document edits. We traced several key changes to an external IP address. These edits were made over the past 3 weeks, always late at night, always targeting clauses related to liability and payment milestones. The edits were subtle, but they consistently shifted meaning in ways that would have been disadvantageous to Hale Dynamics. Klaus leaned forward. Are you saying someone tampered with the contract? We're saying someone with access to the documents made changes that weren't authorized by either party, Victoria said carefully. We don't know who, but we have evidence linking the activity to a firm in New York. Marcus spoke for the first time. This is speculation. You're jeopardizing the deal over paranoid conspiracy theories. It's not paranoia if we have evidence, Sophia countered. And the evidence is compelling. Karim folded his hands on the table. If the contract was compromised, then we need to rebuild it. I will not sign a document I cannot trust. Yumi nodded. Agreed. This partnership is too important to rush. Isabel looked at Klaus, who shrugged and said, Better to take the time now than fight in court later. Marcus's face darkened. This is a disaster. Adrian Pike is not part of this negotiation, Victoria interrupted. And if he tries to interfere, we'll deal with him. But right now, we're focused on getting this right. She turned back to the consortium. Here's what I propose. We start fresh with a single controlling language version, English, and create parallel reference translations in all 7 languages. We establish a standardized glossary of terms that everyone agrees to. We implement a language audit process, both before and after signing, to ensure clarity. And we bring in an independent third party to verify that all versions align. Yumi considered this. That will take time. A week, maybe 2. Klaus shook his head. 2 weeks is too long. Markets are volatile. If we delay that much, the value proposition changes. Victoria looked at Lily. What if we had someone who could expedite the process? Someone who understands all 7 languages and can help us identify issues in real time. Lily felt everyone's eyes turn to her. Her heart pounded. I can do that. If you trust me, Yumi smiled slightly. You caught things our professional interpreters missed. I think we can trust you. Karim inclined his head. I agree. Isabel nodded. As do I. Klaus looked at Marcus, then at Victoria. 1 week. We reconvene in 1 week, with clean terms, verified by this young woman and witnessed by all parties. If it works, we sign. If not, we walk. Victoria extended her hand. Deal. They shook on it. Marcus walked out without a word. The consortium members filed out, speaking quietly among themselves. Sophia began packing up her materials. Victoria turned to Lily and Ethan. Thank you, both of you. Ethan nodded. What happens now? Now we work, and we prove that doing things the right way is worth the extra time. The next week was a blur of conference calls, document reviews, and line-by-line negotiations. Lily became the unofficial language auditor, reviewing every clause, every footnote, every phrase. She worked with translators from all 7 languages, explaining context and dialect, pointing out potential misunderstandings. She created a glossary that defined key terms in each language, with examples and cultural notes. She sat in on video calls with Yumi and Karim and Klaus and Isabel, listening as they discussed the finer points of partnership structure and risk allocation. Sophia drafted a new contract with a controlling language clause that made English the definitive version, with all translations serving as reference only. She included the glossary as an appendix and established a protocol for resolving any disputes that arose from linguistic ambiguity. She worked late into the night, fueled by coffee and determination. Ethan monitored the security side, tracking access to the documents, ensuring no further tampering occurred. He installed additional safeguards, required 2-factor authentication for any edits, and flagged suspicious activity in real time. He also kept digging into the metadata trail, building a case that someone connected to Adrian Pike's fund had indeed interfered with the original contract. He shared his findings with Victoria, who kept them confidential for now. They would decide what to do about Pike after the deal closed. Marcus, meanwhile, grew increasingly isolated. He stopped attending meetings. He spent most of his time on the phone with board members, arguing that Victoria was mismanaging the situation, that the delay was costing them millions, that Pike's offer was looking better every day. But the board, to their credit, held firm. They trusted Victoria's track record. They wanted the deal done right, even if it took longer. On the 6th day, Lily sat in the observation room reviewing the final draft of the contract. She had read it in English, Japanese, German, French, Arabic, Mandarin, and Spanish. She had checked idioms, tested metaphors, verified that every term in the glossary was being used consistently. She had flagged 3 minor issues, all of which had been corrected within hours. Now, as she read through the document one last time, she felt something close to confidence. Her father appeared in the doorway. "How's it looking?" "Good, really good. I think we got it." He sat down beside her. "You did an amazing thing, Lily. You know that, right?" She shrugged. "I just listened." "You did more than listen. You stood up when it mattered. You didn't back down when people doubted you. That takes courage." She leaned against him. "I was scared. I know. But you did it anyway. That's what courage is." The next afternoon, the consortium reconvened. This time, the atmosphere was lighter. Yumi brought tea from Japan. Klaus brought chocolates from Germany. Isabel brought wine from France. Karim brought dates from Dubai. They spread the offerings on a side table and joked that if the deal fell through, at least they would have a good meal. Victoria opened the meeting with a smile. "I think we're ready." Sophia distributed the final contract, along with the verified translations and the glossary. Lily stood at the front of the room and walked everyone through the key changes, explaining how the new structure eliminated ambiguity and ensured that all parties understood the terms in the same way. She highlighted the controlling language clause, the audit protocol, and the dispute resolution process. When she finished, Yumi was the first to speak. "This is much clearer. I feel confident signing this." Karim nodded. "As do I." Klaus glanced at Isabel, who smiled. "We agree. This is a fair contract." Victoria looked around the table. "Then, let's make it official." They signed in stages, each party reviewing the document one last time, adding signatures and initials, witnessing each other's commitments. When it was done, Victoria shook hands with each consortium member, thanking them for their patience and trust. They, in turn, thanked her for her diligence and integrity, and then, almost as an afterthought, Yumi approached Lily. "You have a remarkable gift. I hope you continue to use it." Lily felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you." Karim joined them. "If you ever need a recommendation for university, call me. I would be honored to support you." Klaus grinned. And if you ever want to practice your German in Munich, my door is open. Isabel handed Lily a business card. I work with a linguistic research institute. When you're older, if you're interested, we would love to have you. Lily accepted the card with trembling hands. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Yumi suggested gently. Say you'll keep learning, keep listening, keep speaking truth when others miss it. Lily looked at her father, who stood near the wall with tears in his eyes. She looked at Victoria, who nodded encouragingly. She looked at the consortium members, these powerful people from around the world, who were treating her not like a child, but like a colleague. Yes, she said quietly. I will. The room erupted in applause. Sophia wiped her eyes. Even the interpreters clapped, acknowledging that sometimes the best translation came not from perfect technique but from genuine understanding. Marcus appeared in the doorway as the celebration continued. He stood there for a long moment, watching, his expression unreadable. Then he turned and walked away. No one stopped him. No one followed. His absence felt like a door closing. Later that evening, Victoria called an all-hands meeting. She stood before the entire company and announced that the deal had closed successfully, that the partnership was solid, and that Hale Dynamics had just secured its largest international agreement to date. The room erupted in cheers. Stock prices, which had been monitored anxiously all week, jumped 7% in after-hours trading. Analysts who had predicted disaster now praised Victoria's careful approach. The narrative shifted again, from crisis to triumph. Victoria waited for the noise to die down. I want to acknowledge two people who made this possible. Ethan Cole, our security engineer, identified potential tampering in our contract documents and traced it to an external source. His diligence protected us from a serious threat. She gestured to Ethan, who stood near the back of the room looking uncomfortable. People applauded. And his daughter, Lily Cole, served as our linguistic auditor. She caught discrepancies that could have cost us millions, and she helped us rebuild the contract into something clear and fair for all parties. She looked at Lily. Stand up. Lily stood, her face burning. The applause was louder this time, warmer. People she had never met smiled at her. Some gave her thumbs up. One woman in the front row mouthed, "Thank you." Lily sat back down as quickly as she could, but the warmth stayed with her. Victoria continued, "We're also making organizational changes. Marcus Reeves has decided to pursue other opportunities, effective immediately." There were murmurs, but no one seemed surprised. In his place, we're creating a new department, Integrity and Language Risk Management. This department will ensure that all our international agreements are linguistically sound, culturally sensitive, and legally airtight. She paused. Ethan Cole will serve as the director of this new department, and Lily Cole, when she's available and willing, will serve as an honorary advisor. Ethan looked shocked. Lily grabbed his hand. He squeezed back. Victoria smiled. We're also establishing a scholarship fund called Language for Justice. It will support young people who want to study linguistics, translation, and cross-cultural communication, because words matter. Understanding matters. And we almost learned that lesson the hard way. The applause this time was thunderous. After the meeting ended, people swarmed Ethan and Lily, congratulating them, asking questions, thanking them. It was overwhelming and wonderful, and exhausting all at once. Finally, Victoria pulled them aside and suggested they go home, get some rest, and come back tomorrow to discuss the details of the new roles. They drove back to Oakland in comfortable silence. The city lights blurred past the car windows. Lily rested her head against the glass, feeling the vibration of the road beneath them. Her father reached over and squeezed her shoulder. "Proud of you, kiddo. Proud of you too, Dad." They stopped for takeout on the way home, Thai food from their favorite place, and ate it sitting on the floor of their living room with a movie playing on the laptop. It was an old film, something black and white and comforting, and neither of them paid much attention to it. They were too tired, too full of the day's events, too aware that their lives had just shifted in ways they were still trying to understand. After dinner, Lily opened her notebook to a fresh page. She wrote the date at the top, then paused. Finally, she wrote, "Sometimes the most important thing you can do is listen. Really listen, not just to the words people say, but to what they mean. Not just to the language they use, but to the truth they're trying to share. Dad taught me that, and today, I got to teach it to a room full of people who needed to hear it." She closed the notebook and looked at her father, who was dozing on the couch. She pulled a blanket over him and turned off the lamp. The apartment was quiet now, just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic below. She stood by the window and looked out at the city, at the lights scattered across the hills, at the bridges glowing in the dark. Somewhere out there, people were speaking 100 different languages, trying to connect, trying to understand, trying to build something together. And Lily knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her chest, that she would spend her life helping them do exactly that. The weeks that followed brought a flurry of change. Ethan set up his new office on the executive floor, hiring a small team of linguists, cultural consultants, and risk analysts. He established protocols for reviewing all international contracts, not just for legal accuracy but for linguistic clarity. He created training programs to help executives understand the importance of cultural context in negotiations. And he made sure that every employee who worked with foreign partners had access to resources that would help them communicate more effectively. Lily returned to school, but now she spent her afternoons and weekends working with her father's team. She reviewed documents, consulted on translation issues, and participated in video conferences with partners around the world. She became something of a minor celebrity in the business press. The 12-year-old who saved an $80 million deal. Journalists wanted interviews. Podcasts invited her on. A documentary crew asked to follow her for a day. Ethan politely declined most of the requests, wanting to protect her childhood, but he let her do a few carefully selected appearances where she could talk about the importance of language education and cross-cultural understanding. Victoria, true to her word, launched the Language for Justice Scholarship Fund with an initial endowment of $2 million. Applications poured in from students all over the country, young people who wanted to study linguistics, translation, international relations, and cultural anthropology. The first class of scholarship recipients was announced in the spring, and Lily attended the ceremony, shaking hands with students who were only a few years older than her, listening to their stories about why language mattered to them. One recipient was a refugee from Syria who had learned English in a camp and now wanted to become a UN interpreter. Another was a Native American student studying to preserve her tribe's endangered language. A third was a deaf student researching sign language variations across cultures. Lily listened to each of them and felt a connection that transcended age and experience. They all understood the same fundamental truth, that language was more than words, that communication was the bridge between isolation and community, that being heard and understood was one of the most basic human needs. As for Marcus Reeves, he resurfaced a few months later as a senior vice president at Adrian Pike's fund. The news didn't surprise anyone at Hale Dynamics. What did surprise them was the lawsuit Victoria filed shortly after, alleging corporate espionage and contract interference. Ethan's metadata analysis, combined with testimony from the consortium's IT security teams, built a compelling case. The lawsuit was settled out of court for an undisclosed sum, but the message was clear. Tampering with contracts had consequences. Adrian Pike himself never commented publicly, but his fund quietly closed several of its corporate takeover initiatives in the tech sector. Rumor had it that other companies had started implementing their own language integrity protocols. Inspired by Hale Dynamics' example, the idea spread through the industry like a quiet revolution. Within a year, linguistic auditing became a standard practice in international business negotiations. Lily turned 13 in the summer. Her father threw her a small party in their apartment, inviting a few of her school friends and some of her new colleagues from the linguistics team. Yumi sent a gift from Tokyo, a beautiful calligraphy set with a note encouraging Lily to explore the art of written language. Karim sent a collection of classical Arabic poetry, with parallel English translations. Klaus sent chocolate, because of course he did. Isabel sent a membership to an online linguistics database that would give Lily access to thousands of research papers and dialect recordings. Victoria came to the party, bearing a gift wrapped in silver paper. Inside was a leather-bound journal, with Lily's initials embossed on the cover. On the first page, Victoria had written, "For the words you'll discover, the truths you'll uncover, and the bridges you'll build. Keep listening, keep learning, keep speaking up." Lily hugged her, feeling tears prick her eyes. "Thank you for everything." Victoria held her tight. "Thank you for reminding me why I do this work. It's not about the money or the deals. It's about doing things the right way, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." That night, after everyone had gone home and the apartment was quiet again, Lily sat by the window with her new journal open in her lap. She could hear the wind pressing against the glass, that sound her father called the wind through the glass, the ambient noise of the world moving around them. She thought about all the voices in that wind, all the languages being spoken, all the stories being told, all the truths waiting to be heard. She picked up her pen and began to write. Language is not just about words, it's about trust. When we speak, we're asking someone to believe us, to understand us, to meet us halfway. When we listen, we're offering the same thing in return. Every conversation is a small act of faith. Every translation is a bridge between worlds. And sometimes, when the stakes are high and the words are tangled, and everyone is talking but no one is really hearing, it takes just one person willing to listen between the lines to make all the difference. She paused, thinking. Then she added, "Today, that person was me. Tomorrow, it could be anyone. All you have to do is pay attention." Months turned into a year. Lily started high school, advanced placement classes in linguistics and international relations and computer science. She continued working with her father's team, taking on increasingly complex projects. She helped negotiate a partnership with a Brazilian manufacturing firm, catching a Portuguese idiom that had been mistranslated in a way that would have voided the warranty terms. She assisted in a merger discussion with a Korean tech company, identifying a crucial misunderstanding about intellectual property rights that stemmed from different cultural assumptions about ownership and collaboration. Each time, she approached the work the same way, with curiosity, with humility, with a genuine desire to help people understand each other. She never claimed to know everything. She always asked questions. She listened more than she spoke. And when she did speak, people listened back, because they had learned that her insights were worth hearing. The new department Ethan led grew from 3 people to 15, then to 30. They became a model for the industry, consulted by other companies, featured in business school case studies. Harvard Business Review published an article titled "The 12-Year-Old Who Changed Corporate Communication." The Wall Street Journal ran a profile on Ethan headlined, "Single Dad, Security Engineer, Linguistic Revolutionary." Neither of them particularly enjoyed the attention, but they understood its value. If their story could inspire other companies to take language seriously, to invest in cultural competence, to slow down and get things right, then the publicity was worth enduring. Victoria, meanwhile, saw her reputation soar. The successful consortium deal led to 3 more major international partnerships. Hale Dynamics expanded into markets that had previously seemed impenetrable. The stock price tripled over 2 years. She was named CEO of the Year by multiple business publications. And in every interview, she credited the same 2 things: patience and linguistic integrity. "We almost made an $80 million mistake," she said in one interview, "because we were moving too fast to hear what was really being said." Lily Cole taught us to slow down. She taught us that words matter. She taught us that understanding is more valuable than speed. On a cool evening in October, 2 years after the consortium deal, Victoria invited Ethan and Lily to dinner at her home in Pacific Heights. It was a modest gathering, Just the three of them and Sophia, who had become a close friend to all of them. They ate on Victoria's terrace overlooking the bay, watching the sun set over the Golden Gate Bridge, talking about everything and nothing. At one point, Victoria raised her glass. A toast. To language. To listening. To the courage it takes to speak up when everyone else is rushing forward. They clinked glasses. Lily, drinking sparkling cider, smiled. And to second chances. To do things right. To second chances, they echoed. Later, as the evening cooled and the stars emerged above the city, Lily found herself standing at the terrace, railing next to Victoria. The older woman looked tired, but content. "Can I ask you something?" Lily said. "Of course. Do you ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't caught those translation errors? If the deal had gone through as planned?" Victoria considered this. "I try not to dwell on alternate histories. But yes, sometimes I wonder. Based on Sophia's analysis, we would have discovered the problems eventually, probably within the first year of the partnership. By then, we would have been locked into terms we couldn't easily escape. It would have cost us, financially and reputationally. It might have destroyed the company." She glanced at Lily. "So yes, you saved us. Not just $80 million, but our future." Lily shook her head. "I just noticed something that didn't sound right, and you had the courage to say so. That's not a small thing, Lily. Most people don't speak up, even when they know something's wrong. They assume someone else will handle it. They worry about being wrong, about looking foolish, about causing trouble. You didn't let those fears stop you." "I was scared," Lily admitted. "I'm still scared sometimes. When I review contracts now, I always worry I'll miss something important. That fear keeps you sharp. The day you stop worrying is the day you stop being careful." Victoria smiled. "But you should also trust yourself. You have a gift. You've proven it, over and over. Don't let fear make you doubt what you know." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the lights of the city spread out below them like a constellation of human stories, each one told in a different language, each one waiting to be heard. The autumn Lily turned 15. She received an invitation to speak at a linguistics conference at Stanford University. The theme was Translation and Trust in Global Communication. She would be on a panel with professional interpreters, translation scholars, and international business consultants. Her father helped her prepare, but mostly he just listened as she worked through her thoughts out loud, pacing their living room, gesturing with her hands the way she always did when she was excited about an idea. On the day of the conference, she stood at a podium in front of 200 people and told them the story of the consortium deal. She explained how the translation errors had occurred, not through malice or incompetence, but through the inherent complexity of moving meaning across languages and cultures. She talked about the importance of context, of understanding not just what words mean in a dictionary, but what they mean to the people using them. She talked about the need for humility, for recognizing that even experts can miss things, that sometimes fresh eyes see what experienced ones overlook. And then she said something that would be quoted in articles and textbooks for years to come. Translation isn't just about finding equivalent words. It's about finding equivalent truth, and truth is complicated. It's layered. It's shaped by history and culture and personal experience. When we translate, we're not just moving words from one language to another. We're building a bridge between worlds. And if we build that bridge carelessly, if we rush it or cut corners or assume it's good enough, people get hurt. Companies lose money. Partnerships fail. Trust breaks. So we have to build carefully. We have to listen deeply. We have to care about getting it right, even when it's hard, even when it takes longer, even when people are telling us to hurry up and just sign the deal, because words matter. Words are how we make promises, and promises are how we build the future. The audience gave her a standing ovation. Afterward, people lined up to talk to her, to ask questions, to share their own stories of translation gone wrong and relationships saved by careful listening. A documentary filmmaker asked if she could interview Lily for a project about language and global commerce. A university press editor asked if she had ever considered writing a book. A high school teacher from Oakland asked if Lily would come speak to her students about the importance of learning languages. Lily said yes to all of it, because she understood now that her gift wasn't just about speaking 7 languages. It was about using those languages to connect people, to build trust, to create understanding where confusion had existed before. And that was work worth doing, work that mattered. Work that could change the world in small but significant ways. That night, back in their apartment, Ethan made hot chocolate the way he had when Lily was little, with extra marshmallows and a sprinkle of cinnamon. They sat on the couch together, wrapped in blankets, listening to the familiar sounds of their home. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic, the wind pressing against the windows that sound like breath, like the city itself was alive and speaking. "Dad?" Lily said quietly. "Yeah? Thank you for teaching me to listen." Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "You always knew how. I just encouraged you to trust it. Do you think we made a difference with everything that happened?" He considered the question seriously. "I think we reminded people that cutting corners has consequences. That going fast isn't the same as going right. That sometimes the most important thing you can do is slow down and make sure everyone is actually saying what they think they're saying." He smiled. "So yeah, I think we made a difference." Lily nodded and leaned against him, feeling safe and proud and hopeful all at once. Outside, the city continued its endless conversation. Millions of voices in hundreds of languages, all trying to be heard, all trying to understand, all trying to connect across the distances that separated them. And somewhere in that vast chorus, Lily knew, there were other people like her, other listeners, other bridge builders, other quiet heroes who paid attention when others rushed past. She hoped they would speak up when it mattered. She hoped they would trust their instincts. She hoped they would remember that words were more than sounds or symbols on a page. Words were promises. Words were power. Words were the threads that held the world together. And if you listened carefully enough, if you really paid attention, you could hear the truth singing beneath every sentence, waiting to be understood. 3 years later, Lily graduated from high school at the top of her class. She had scholarship offers from a dozen universities, all of them eager to have the girl who had saved an $80 million deal and gone on to consult for Fortune 500 companies while still in her teens. She chose to stay close to home, accepting a full ride to UC Berkeley, where she would study linguistics and international business, with plans to develop new frameworks for cross-cultural communication in the digital age. On her last night before moving into the dorms, she sat with her father in their apartment one final time. They had lived there for 8 years, this small space that had been their refuge and their headquarters, their home and their launching pad. Tomorrow, Lily would start a new chapter. Tonight, they wanted to honor the one that was ending. Ethan pulled out a box from the closet. Inside were artifacts from their journey. The original notebook Lily had used during the consortium negotiation, now worn and dog-eared, a printed copy of the final contract with all 7 translations bound together. Photographs from the scholarship fund ceremony. The business cards Yumi and Kareem and Klaus and Isabel had given her. Newspaper clippings and magazine articles. A handwritten note from Victoria that said simply, "You changed everything. Thank you." They looked through it all together, remembering, laughing, marveling at how much had happened in such a short time. And then, Lily pulled out her journal, the leather-bound one Victoria had given her for her 13th birthday, now filled cover to cover with observations and insights and stories. She opened to the last page and read aloud what she had written that morning. "I used to think language was about words. Then I thought it was about meaning. Now I know it's about something bigger. It's about the space between people. The gap we have to cross to really see each other, to really understand each other. Every time we speak, We're reaching across that gap. Every time we listen, we're building a bridge. And every time we get it right, every time we truly connect, we make the world a little smaller, a little kinder, a little more whole. She closed the journal and looked at her father. Is that too sentimental? He shook his head, his eyes bright. It's perfect. They sat together in the quiet apartment, listening to the wind through the glass one last time. Father and daughter, engineer and linguist, two people who had learned that the smallest voice could change everything if someone was brave enough to speak up and patient enough to really hear. And in the morning, when Lily Cole walked out into the world to begin the next chapter of her story, she carried with her the most important lesson her father had ever taught her: that truth lived in the spaces between words, that understanding required courage, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was simply listen, truly listen, to what people were really trying to say. The wind pressed against the glass, the city hummed, and somewhere, someone was speaking a truth that needed to be heard. Lily was ready.